10 Unexpected Facts about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Welcome back to Next Chapter Audio. Today, we're diving into the remarkable life of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. While most of us know him as the mastermind behind Sherlock Holmes, there's so much more to his story. From his medical career to his unexpected knighthood, Doyle's life was filled with fascinating twists and turns. So let's count down 10 surprising facts about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle that reveal the man behind the detective. Number 10. Knighted for war, not writing. You might assume Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was knighted for his literary brilliance, especially for creating Sherlock Holmes. But surprisingly, his knighthood had nothing to do with his famous detective. Instead, it was his contributions to the British government during the Second Boer War from 1899 to 1902 that earned him the title of Sir. Doyle wasn't just a writer. He was a doctor, and he worked in a field hospital during the war. But what really caught the British government's attention was a pamphlet he wrote, defending Britain's actions in South Africa. This piece became widely popular and influential, showcasing his patriotic support for the war effort. In 1902, Arthur Conan Doyle was knighted, not for his literary achievements, but for his role in defending British interests. Quite an unexpected accolade for a man best known for fiction. Wouldn't you agree? Number 9. The Jesuits made me do it. Doyle embraced spiritualism later in life, and while many people are aware of this, there's more to the story. He participated in seances, tried to prove that psychic powers were real, and even attempted to confirm the existence of the infamous Cottingley fairies. Now, many think this fascination with the supernatural began as a way for Doyle to cope with grief after losing several family members. But the truth is, his turn toward spiritualism started much earlier. At just 9 years old, Doyle was sent to a strict Jesuit boarding school, a place known for its harsh discipline and belief in corporal punishment. By the time he reached adulthood, he had completely lost faith in organized religion. The beatings and strict regime he endured had left a deep mark on him. Though this type of discipline was common in many boarding schools at the time, it was enough to push Doyle away from traditional beliefs and may have led him toward the mystical path he later followed in life. Number 8. One drink too many. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is often overshadowed by his famous creation, Sherlock Holmes, leaving many unaware of the deep struggles that shaped his life. Doyle went through several unhappy periods, and he coped with much of it by writing letters to his mother, a form of therapy for him. His troubles, however, began early. At just 9 years old, Doyle and his siblings were scattered among relatives, sent away to different places. The reason? His father, Charles Altamont Doyle, struggled with alcoholism and was unable to maintain a steady job or care for the family. While Doyle never spoke of serious physical abuse from his father, the dysfunction caused by his father's addiction left a lasting impact. Later in life, Doyle had no qualms about signing off on the order to have his father committed. And in his Sherlock Holmes stories, his disdain for drunkenness is clear. He often depicted alcoholics as violent and unreliable. Doyle even used his father's middle name, Altamont, for one of Holmes's aliases, a character who, in Doyle's own words, declared war on both the King's English and the English king. Number 7. An eye-opening profession. Besides being the mastermind behind Sherlock Holmes and dabbling in the world of psychic phenomena, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had another impressive title. He was an accomplished doctor, specifically an ophthalmologist. For those who might not know, that's the highest level of eye doctor, performing delicate surgeries and dealing with the most complex procedures related to vision. But Doyle's medical knowledge didn't stop with eyes. During his time as a medical student, he learned a great deal about general surgery. One of the most formative experiences of his life came when he spent 7 months aboard a whaling vessel as the ship's surgeon. Imagine the rugged life at sea, tending to sailors with all kinds of injuries. It must have been an eye-opener in more ways than one. This experience at sea inspired many of Doyle's adventure stories, featuring sailors, mutinies, and other ocean escapades. In fact, it likely influenced the gripping tale of a harpooner nailing his former captain to the wall. By 1891, Doyle was practicing medicine in London, but writing and researching remained his passion. Number 6. A pretty clueless life. You'd think that the man who invented Sherlock Holmes, the master of observation and deduction, would share some of those famous skills himself. After all, Holmes could deduce someone's entire day from a few stray crumbs on their jacket, or tell you what brand of cigarettes you smoke from a simple ash pattern. But surprisingly, among his friends, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wasn't known for being particularly observant. In fact, some might say he was even less perceptive than the average person. Many have also heard that Doyle occasionally lent his deductive powers to the police, helping solve cases. While he did take up crime solving as a hobby, his real-life success rate was modest. He did help free a couple of wrongly accused men, which was no small feat, but his detective career didn't go much beyond that. Doyle himself had a good sense of humor about his less-than-Holmes-like abilities. He once confessed to trying to solve a police case, only to find out they had cracked it long before he did. His grand conclusion? He deduced that the suspect was left-handed and wore boots with nails in them. Not quite Sherlock level, but at least he could laugh at his own detective shortcomings. Number 5, that phrenology, a pseudoscience that claimed the shape of a person's skull could reveal their intelligence, personality, and even racial characteristics, was quite popular during the 19th century. Unfortunately, to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's discredit, he was an enthusiastic believer in this debunked theory. Phrenology often reinforced racist ideologies, suggesting that Western skull shapes indicated greater intelligence compared to those from Africa or other regions. In his works, Doyle casually referenced phrenology as though it were settled science, with learned characters discussing it as fact. This may seem odd now, knowing how thoroughly phrenology has been discredited. Some might be tempted to forgive Doyle, given the time period he lived in, but there's a catch. Phrenology had already been debunked before Doyle was even born. So if a famous medical man like Doyle were pushing this pseudoscience today, it would raise more than a few eyebrows. It's a curious fact about Doyle, whose contributions to literature are celebrated, but whose belief in outdated science reminds us that even great minds aren't immune to the influence of their times. Number 4, a pseudo-scientific interest. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was more than just a prolific writer. He was deeply curious about the world and eager to explore new ideas. This fascination with discovery and innovation led him to embrace a wide range of subjects, from medicine to history, and even to run as a parliamentary candidate. However, his desire to be on the cutting edge of scientific discovery also left him susceptible to pseudoscientific beliefs, ideas that either had been discredited or were never seriously considered by the scientific community. Unfortunately, some of these questionable ideas crept into his famous detective stories. For instance, in The Adventure of the Creeping Man, Doyle crafted a plot around a man who takes a serum made from monkey blood in an attempt to regain his youth, only to start thinking and acting like a monkey. Another example comes from The Adventure of the Sussex Vampire, where a character uses the idea of sucking blood from a wound to cure poisoning, a medical approach that was entirely baseless. Though his works remain legendary, these curious forays into pseudoscience show that even brilliant minds like Doyle's were not immune to the allure of the unknown, often blending fact with fiction in surprising ways. Number 3, the racism of the times. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, like many people of his era, has faced accusations of racism. Some point to various problematic aspects in his stories and personal beliefs. Doyle's support of controversial topics such as the Boer War in South Africa and his endorsement of phrenology are often highlighted as evidence of his views. More troublingly, many of his stories depict non-British people, particularly black characters and islanders, in negative and stereotypical ways, often portraying them as grotesque, uncultured, or violent. While some defend Doyle's attitudes as reflective of the time in which he lived, there are moments in his work that are difficult to reconcile, particularly the way Sherlock Holmes behaves in The Adventure of the Three Gables. In this story, a black boxer named Steve Dixie comes to threaten Holmes, and the detective responds with a series of racially charged insults that are shocking to modern readers. Later in the same story, a policeman uses a racial slur to describe the boxer, and Holmes fails to address or correct the language, making it seem as though it were acceptable. Some readers argue that Doyle himself may not have written this particular story, suggesting it might have been ghost-written, pointing to more progressive moments in his other works, such as The Yellow Face, which features a heartwarming story of racial acceptance. Nevertheless, The Adventure of the Three Gables stands as a reminder that even beloved writers can be products of their time, grappling with views that now seem outdated and offensive. Number 2, a dark and bloody connection. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wore many hats throughout his life: historian, spiritualist, sailor, eye surgeon, and of course the famed creator of Sherlock Holmes. But one theory about Doyle takes a far darker turn. Some conspiracy theorists believe that Doyle might have been Jack the Ripper himself. This wild theory links Doyle to the infamous 1888 murders in London's Whitechapel district. Some point to his time spent on a whaling vessel in the Arctic, claiming that he demonstrated a morbid fascination with killing whales, a hint, they suggest, of darker inclinations. Others point to his troubled upbringing, highlighting his father's issues with alcohol and his experience at a Jesuit boarding school that subjected him to beatings. One of the most cited pieces of evidence for this theory is the claim that the letters Jack the Ripper sent to the police were written on stationery similar to what Doyle used. The writing styles, they argue, bear certain resemblances, and some of Doyle's stories even allude to the Ripper murders. Still, it's important to note that there's no concrete proof to back up these claims, and most historians consider the idea pure speculation. Nevertheless, the mere suggestion that Doyle, an iconic literary figure, could be tied to one of the world's most notorious unsolved murder cases continues to captivate the imagination of conspiracy theorists. Number 1, Sherlock Holmes and the Future of Crime. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle may have been frustrated by how Sherlock Holmes overshadowed his other pursuits, such as his medical and spiritual work. However, if he had known just how much impact his famous detective had on the real world of crime solving, perhaps he would have felt differently. Holmes wasn't just a fictional sleuth. He became a pioneer for a modern forensic science. While some of Holmes' feats, like deducing a person's profession from a glance, may have been more literary sleight of hand than reality, the character's use of chemistry, ballistics, and forensic evidence to crack cases was groundbreaking. At the time Doyle was writing, many crimes were solved simply through witness testimony or obvious clues like the proverbial smoking gun. But Sherlock Holmes introduced readers to the idea that crimes could be solved through scientific investigation and meticulous attention to detail. Holmes's methods, though fictional, inspired real-world advances in forensic science. Edmund Locard, considered the father of modern forensics, was directly influenced by Doyle's stories. Locard later established the world's first forensic laboratory, taking inspiration from the scientific rigor displayed by Holmes. Today, much of crime solving, from fingerprinting to ballistics, owes a nod to the methods Doyle gave to his fictional detective, forever changing the world of law enforcement. And there you have it, 10 surprising facts about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the man who gave us Sherlock Holmes, but whose life was filled with so much more. From his medical career to his forays into spiritualism and even his controversial views, Doyle's life was as complex and multifaceted as the stories he wrote. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more deep dives into the lives of history's greatest writers. Thanks for listening to Next Chapter Audio, where we explore the untold stories behind the legends. Until next time, stay curious.